Simon Cowell shocked the world when he announced that he was stepping back from the spotlight. For decades, he ruled the entertainment industry, becoming the sharp-tongued face of talent shows like American Idol, Britain's Got Talent, and The X Factor. But this time, the reason wasn't ratings, money, or even his own health scares. It was something much deeper. His son, Eric, received a heartbreaking diagnosis. And for the first time in his career, Simon Cowell admitted that family mattered more than fame. This is the emotional story of how Simon Cowell, a man who once swore he'd never settle down, completely transformed into a devoted father, and why his goodbye hit so many fans harder than anyone expected. Simon Philip Cowell was born in London in 1959. He grew up in a modest family but always had a sharp tongue and big dreams. By the time he entered the music industry, he quickly gained a reputation for being brutally honest and incredibly ambitious. In the early 2000s, when he joined American Idol, audiences around the world couldn't look away. Some hated him, some loved him, but everyone tuned in to see what Simon would say next. His cutting remarks, no-nonsense critiques, and his ability to spot raw talent made him both feared and respected. He turned unknown singers into household names. Kelly Clarkson, Leona Lewis, One Direction. All of them became global stars because Simon Cowell knew exactly how to shape them into icons. By the mid-2000s, Simon was one of the most powerful people in television. He had fame, fortune, and more influence than most Hollywood executives could dream of. But behind the fame, there was a darker truth. Simon was known as a workaholic. He lived for ratings, contracts, and deals. He spent long nights working and admitted he was obsessed with success. For years, he said he never wanted marriage or kids. To him, the idea of family life sounded boring. But life has a way of surprising even the most stubborn people. In 2013, everything changed. Simon's partner, Lauren Silverman, gave birth to their son, Eric, on Valentine's Day 2014. Simon, the man who once swore he didn't want children, fell in love instantly. He named Eric after his late father, who Simon had been incredibly close to. Suddenly, the harshest critic in showbiz was softer. He smiled more. He admitted in interviews that becoming a dad gave him purpose in a way money and fame never could. He said, "The day I saw the scan of my son, I just knew. My life changed forever." But as Eric grew older, Simon noticed challenges. Whispers began to spread about Eric's health. Some tabloids speculated about autism, others about developmental delays. For years, Simon avoided confirming anything. He didn't want the world judging his son. But privately, Simon was deeply worried. Reports later confirmed that Eric had been diagnosed with global developmental delay, a condition that makes it harder for children to reach milestones like speech, motor skills, and learning at the same pace as others. For Simon, this news was devastating. The man who had built a career on perfection and high standards suddenly realized that the most important thing in his life couldn't be measured in ratings or record sales. It was about supporting his son no matter what. And this diagnosis became the turning point. But that wasn't the only heartbreak Simon faced. Around the same time, tragedy struck the entertainment world when Liam Payne, one of the stars Simon helped launch in One Direction, died in a shocking accident. The news hit Simon like a punch to the chest. He posted a heartbreaking tribute online, admitting he felt empty. For Simon, Liam wasn't just a former contestant. He was like family, and losing him reminded Simon of how fragile life really was. All of this came on top of Simon's own health problems. In 2020, he suffered a brutal back injury after falling off his electric bike. Doctors warned him it could have left him paralyzed. Simon underwent surgery and was forced to slow down. For a man who never took breaks, this was a wake-up call. He realized he wasn't invincible. And with his son's diagnosis weighing heavily on his mind, he made a decision that shocked fans everywhere. Simon Cowell announced that he would be stepping back from the spotlight. He said he wanted to spend more time with his son. For a man who once lived for cameras and audiences, this was an emotional goodbye nobody saw coming. Fans who had followed him for decades couldn't believe it. The harshest critic on TV was leaving, not because of ratings or contracts, but because of love. Behind the scenes, Simon's life looked very different than it did in his prime. Instead of staying up all night watching auditions and chasing contracts, Simon was now reading bedtime stories and helping his son with schoolwork. Instead of being the man who controlled every note of a performance, he was learning patience as his son worked through his challenges. He even said in an interview that being a dad taught him to be kinder. And the truth is, Simon's entire career changed because of fatherhood. Before Eric was born, Simon was known for being cold and calculating. But after Eric, fans began to notice a softer side. On America's Got Talent, he would sometimes tear up during emotional performances. When young contestants with disabilities performed, Simon often broke down in tears, clearly thinking of his own son. Viewers saw a man who was no longer just a critic. He was a father. Even Simon admitted that fatherhood humbled him. He said, "When I lost my parents, I thought I'd never feel that kind of love again. But when I became a dad, it was like I was alive again." Those words shocked people who had only ever seen him as tough and unemotional. Simon also began using his wealth and influence for something new: medical research and charities. He became a patron for Together for Short Lives, a charity for seriously ill children. He donated millions to help fund treatments and support families who were going through the same struggles he was facing with Eric. For once, Simon wasn't building stars. He was fighting for children's futures. But the goodbye wasn't easy. For years, Simon had been the heartbeat of talent shows around the world. His absence left a hole. Producers scrambled to replace him with guest judges. Fans begged him to return. And while Simon has made appearances here and there, it's clear his priorities have shifted permanently. He no longer wants to dominate the spotlight. He wants to be present for his son. Even so, Simon hasn't completely disappeared. He's still involved in creative projects. He's even writing a children's book series with Eric called Wish Fits, about imaginary animals. For a man once defined by criticism and control, creating whimsical stories with his son shows just how much he has changed. But what makes this story even more powerful is how much it connects to Simon's past. When Simon was younger, he admitted he was lost after his parents died. He filled the void with work, money, and fame. But it never really made him happy. It wasn't until Eric was born that Simon found peace. In many ways, his son saved him. And even though Eric's diagnosis is heartbreaking, Simon has said that his son gave him a reason to live, to slow down, and to love in a way he never had before. Today, Simon still struggles. He worries about Eric's future. He fears the pressure of fame might affect him. He even admitted he doesn't want Eric on social media or having a phone yet, because the internet can be so cruel. But at the same time, Simon lights up whenever he talks about his son. He brags about how Eric loves music and even wants to start a rock band. Simon joked that it would be torture to hear his son audition for Britain's Got Talent. But deep down, it's clear he's proud. And maybe that's the real emotional goodbye here. Not just Simon saying goodbye to the spotlight, but Simon saying goodbye to the old version of himself. The man who lived only for work is gone. The man who once prided himself on being ruthless has been replaced by a father who cries, who laughs, who cares. Simon Cowell's story isn't just about fame, talent shows, or ratings. It's about how life can flip in an instant. How one diagnosis, one accident, or one loss can make you rethink everything. For Simon, the harshest judge in entertainment history, fatherhood was the one thing that finally judged him, and changed him for the better. And as fans reflect on his emotional goodbye, one thing is clear. Simon Cowell may no longer dominate TV screens like he once did. But in choosing his son over fame, he's shown the world that sometimes the greatest success isn't in creating stars. It's in being there for the people you love. That is Simon Cowell's real legacy.